You might have heard about Bitcoin, blockchain, digital currencies, and kind of wonder what is going on with this. Well, this is the video for you. I get a chance to find out what's going on with it, how you can use it as an entrepreneur, and more that's available as I talk with my buddy and journalist who knows about Bitcoin and knows about what's going on in this space, Sterlin Luxan. Ladies and gentlemen, we are broadcasting. I'm Terry Brock, and I'm joined by Sterlin Luxan, who is joining me from his offices out there in Texarkana. Sterlin, good to have you with us today.
Good to be here with you, Terry. I look forward to the discussion we're going to have today, sir. I hope your day has gone fantastic so far.
It has, and you know why? And the reason we're doing this today is because today is a momentous day. It is May the 22nd. Currently happens to be 2017 as we're watching this, and we're recording this, I should say. Those watching it later on will know that this is a special day because it is known as Bitcoin Pizza Day. This is the day when 7 years ago today, someone named Laszlo Hanyecz, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and if Laszlo, if you watch this later, please let me know how I can make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Laszlo is a programmer. He was back there and he was working with this new thing called Bitcoin, and he did a lot of work with it, and he decided, I'd really like to do something in the real world with this. It's fun to send messages back and forth to my other programmers and other people that like Bitcoin, but I want to do something real in the real world. And what better thing to do, Sterlin, I think you would agree with this, than buy a pizza, right?
Absolutely. That is
a good way to do it. So, and matter of fact, Laszlo bought not just one, but he wanted to get two large pizzas. So he contacted someone, took him a few days to get somebody to agree to it, and he ended up spending 10,000, I said that correctly, 10,000 Bitcoins to get those two pizzas, valued at the time of about $25. Well, 10,000 Bitcoins have gone up quite a bit today. Sterlin, you are a journalist and a person who writes regularly about Bitcoin, what's happening in the blockchain world. You work for Bitcoin.com. Tell us what that means to get 10,000 Bitcoins.
Well, today to get 10,000 Bitcoins, which I would say unfortunately, but it's actually going to be fortunately 10,000 Bitcoins worth roughly about $20 million. And anybody can go and research this and look at this by taking a glance at Jamie Redmond's article, who just posted on Bitcoin.com and talked a little bit about the history and a little bit about the experience that Laszlo had when he was attempting to purchase these pizzas with his 10,000 Bitcoins. And if memory serves, the individual who purchased this Bitcoin is still around as well, but it's up in the air, I think, if he still owns the 10,000 Bitcoins or if he is worth that amount or if he subsequently emptied his pockets of that Bitcoin. But yeah, this is a beautiful, momentous day for sure. It's an amazing thing to be able to purchase that pizza and then realize in retrospect that this pizza was worth roughly $20 million. That's an amazing thing.
Exactly. Well, matter of fact, one of the things we're going to do here, because we're going on Facebook Live, we're using a little interface here called the Blue Jeans. I'm going to share my screen with you, Sterlin, and with everyone joining us right now so they can come over and see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to bounce over here to this page right here. You can see where we saw it. For instance, if you had $100, this is on today's Yahoo Finance, if you bought $100 of Bitcoin 7 years ago, you'd be sitting on, now look at this, Sterlin, 72.9 million now after new record high. Now, I don't know about you, Sterlin, but where I grew up out in the country, we call that serious money.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the country as well, and that is, you nailed it.
It's that's a lot of money on that. And matter of fact, let's go over to the site, the place where you can go, and we'll see Bitcoin.com. Here we are. There we are. You can see what the price is. And as of right now, as we're recording this, $2,236.55 per Bitcoin. Now multiply that by 10,000, and you get an idea of the, oh my goodness, kind of level that we're in right there. Sterlin, what do you think about that?
I think that is definitely worth the pizza. Getting the money
That
back
better
from
be mighty fine
right. Yeah,
pizza.
yeah. Oh yeah, that better be the pizza of immortality. I better live forever after I eat that pizza if we think about that in terms of today's price. No, it's yeah, just an amazing thing. And it for the Bitcoin ecosystem currently, this is no real surprise that we're finally reaching this level of price. You know, there was some speculation that this was a bubble and that the bubble would eventually pop and go down. And maybe there was a minor bubble because we had here recently one of the issues with one of the exchanges, I believe it was Bitfinex, and there were some issues with Bitstamp, one of the cryptocurrency exchanges as well, where it was their prices were perhaps hyperinflated because there were some people, or they were having some issues where they couldn't accept fiat-based exchanges, and those were being slowed down. So it caused a lot of people to try to make a correction with their Bitcoin, which artificially inflated the price for a time being. But I think the correction's already happened, and Bitfinex at least has started to accept currency exchanges, fiat currency exchanges again. So that's already been corrected as far as I can tell. Although there have been some surges in users on a lot of these platforms, so it's been an issue with, well, are we going to be able to do anything with Bitcoin now? Is there going to be another crash, et cetera? Is there going to be any problems? But that doesn't look like it's been the case. I think a lot of these exchanges are working things up, because we know if exchanges get flooded, or if there's some type of issues where they can't accept fiat currency, it affects the price and may cause an artificial bubble to be created on,
Exactly. I think to their credit, right? What Bitfinex has said is they're going to work and diligently try to pay back all of those coins that were stolen away from it. I think, okay, that's good to them. We give cheers to them for doing that. And the price of Bitcoin going up has been good. But I think also we want to hasten to add on this, it doesn't mean that Bitcoin always goes like this, in a straight hockey stick up. We have seen it increasing dramatically in the last few weeks, but throughout its history, it's been more like ups and downs and things like that. I like the way that Andreas Antonopoulos says it when he says, somebody asked, well, will you lose money in Bitcoin? He says, yes, you will lose money and you will gain money. You will do both. It's going to go up and down. Well, you've been in the Bitcoin space for quite a while, Sterlin. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I recently wrote an article about the volatility, the alleged volatility of Bitcoin. There's two things that I want to mention. The first thing is that statistically, over the long term, Bitcoin's volatility has actually decreased. There's been an increase in stability in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I think there are some statistics. Maybe here in a minute I can attempt to pull an article up on this. This article, this one that I'm referencing, wasn't written by me. It's actually a little bit of an older one, and I think it was maybe by Justin Connell. But anyway, so it's starting to stabilize a bit, and even though we're seeing some volatility still, the overall trend has started to decline, and it's becoming a bit more stable. But there's a second point. Yeah, that's a great thing, especially for Bitcoin. It was a lot of people speculate that the more people adopt Bitcoin, and Andreas Antonopoulos also talked about this, the more people that adopt it, the more stable the currency is going to become over time, because there's probably more liquidity in the market, more people able to exchange it without causing huge fluctuations in the price. So that's a really great thing to happen. Now, there's another more obscure argument about volatility, and this one was written by the individual who is the head of the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, Daniel Krawitz. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. But his idea was there's always going to be volatility, and this idea that there can be a totally stable currency is an illusion that's created by governments and other institutions who constantly control and manipulate currency rates, manipulate interest rates, because we live in a naturally chaotic world where things are unstable as a result of the physics that we're embedded in. So this idea that things are always going to be stable and on a path that we would see as stable is a result of different forms of propaganda and the way that governments portray the way their currencies function. So we can expect any currency to be volatile as long as it's existing on an open, free market where different variables are going to cause that exchange rate to fluctuate.
Yeah. And actually, even fiat currencies,
Yeah.
we look at that every day. They're up and down. How is the dollar versus, say, the yen or the euro, the British pound sterling or other currencies?
Right.
It's up and down, right? And a politician might do something stupid, which they do often, but they can do something stupid, and that's going to change the price and go up and down. Or, oh my goodness, this thing happened over here, and that thing over there, terrible thing happened. That affects currency. So, of course, Bitcoin and other currencies are going to be like that.
That's right. I like we talked about, as long as more people continue to adopt it, more people continue to appreciate it. Something else we can get into, as long as the community is able to stay level-headed and work with the scaling debate and try to figure out how to properly scale Bitcoin in a way that helps the entire ecosystem, then I think we're going to continue to see, again, more adoption, more stability, and more acceptance of the currency over the long term. So I think that's the kind of state of affairs that we're in right now. And I see a bright future ahead of us in terms of Bitcoin, because I think we'll be able to handle all these issues, and the volatility is just going to continue to level out. Of course, we know that the big hits to volatility, over the last 5 years even to the last decade, has been this: every time an exchange gets hacked, or every time someone is accused of fraud or having some kind of nefarious dealings with Bitcoin, all of that also has an impact on the price, because it causes people who are holding Bitcoin in large quantities to dump that at once, because there's a streak of fear that hits the market. And all that's going to be natural, and people shouldn't panic when that kind of stuff happens and then start selling Bitcoin. And here's the problem: a lot of people still don't understand Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. So when they see that an exchange gets hacked, say like recently with Bitfinex, most recently, and then of course earlier on in the early days of Bitcoin, when Mt. Gox was hacked,
right,
and then Carpellis eventually was accused of fraud, and the whole other 9 yards. All those caused a major downswing or downtrend in the Bitcoin price, but over time, the community was able to overcome that, and the price would again come back up. But there's no reason to panic when these things happen. But people tend to think that, Bitcoin itself was hacked. They believe that the protocol was hacked, or there's some kind of problem with the infrastructure that Bitcoin, or the architecture that Bitcoin is built on. And that's just not the case. Hackers are just able to get the keys from these exchanges and then steal money that way. It's not like Bitcoin.
In a way, wouldn't it be like we can see the currency of the United States government is there? If one particular bank is broken into and robbed, it doesn't mean, oh my goodness, now all dollars are bad. When we see what happened at Mt. Gox, or Mount Gox, they call it over in Tokyo, we could see that that was just one incident. But I want to go into a more practical application, how entrepreneurs can use this. You talk a lot about that, even though I know you're a student also. You're doing many different things. You're working on your master's degree in counseling psychology, and just profoundly influential in that market. But you also are an expert in the area of Bitcoin, blockchain. Tell us a little bit about what that is for someone that might not know, and the practical applications of that for entrepreneurs and people that are running their own business.
Sure, and you just open the full Pandora's box of ideas with that question.
That's right. We only have 4 days yet to go, so we can do it.
Right. We can write a book on this topic. But let's start with the basics, I guess. Then we'll move into what entrepreneurs can potentially do with Bitcoin, and what maybe some different companies are doing in this space. Might even get into altcoins a little bit. But so Bitcoin is a decentralized peer-to-peer currency that anybody can access right now, as long as they have a connection to the internet, and then they can start wielding and using Bitcoin, taking advantage of it and trading it, and essentially being their own bank right now. And when I say that Bitcoin is decentralized, this just means that it is distributed among a vast number of computers across the globe based on an internet connection, and that is also built on top of what we refer to as a blockchain. And without getting too technical, a blockchain is just a vast distributed public ledger. A ledger is what any kind of bank uses to timestamp and to verify monetary transactions within those particular database. That's right, a database. Except the database that is the Bitcoin blockchain is not centralized. There's not one organization or one clearinghouse that timestamps and verifies transaction.
Why is that a good thing?
It's a good thing because it's this issue of trust, right? We don't have to trust these central organizations, these these governors, these bankers, and these politicians to take care of our money for us.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, there's a system based on mathematics that decentralizes and keeps track of all of these transactions for us. There's these group of miners, and this is a kind of a side topic also. There's a group of miners who actually mine Bitcoin. And while they're mining Bitcoin, they also add new transactions to new blocks. And as these blocks are created, the network as a whole timestamps and verifies, just like a clearinghouse would, each transaction over the long term. And then every time a block becomes full, and I think roughly each block on the blockchain can hold 2 megabytes of data, right? So when these blocks are completed, a new block is generated. And at the same time, these miners are receiving Bitcoin rewards every time they create a new block, every time they solve a mathematical puzzle, so to speak.
So they're really trusting on mathematics much more than a human being. And it seems like we've had enough experience now on the planet as human beings. Over a few thousand years of human experience, we found people inevitably can turn out to be rascals. And they can do something that's hurting other people and bother them, all in the name of the public good in their own way.
Right.
But we've kind of learned now, and what the genius of it is Satoshi Nakamoto, whether that was one person or a group of people putting that out, came up with a system that's based on what you said, mathematics. It's mathematics, and that way you can trust it because we're not putting it into a human being, and it's observed by many, many people in a important term here, decentralized system. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. That is 100% accurate because everything, and this is a key feature of blockchain technology, everything that occurs on the blockchain is transparent. Everybody's wallets are transparent. Any bit of code that is changed or altered or looked at is transparent on the blockchain. Anybody can, and this is what they refer to, of course, as an open source peer-to-peer technology. Anybody can look at it, anybody can develop and add on to it. And that's also one of the beautiful aspects of this technology is that it can grow and people can discover new ways to innovate. And I think Antonopoulos called it innovation at the edges because it's not put into the hands of some small nefarious group of actors who can do whatever they want to it and also try to innovate and add on to it. But when it is accessible to everybody, to the world at large, then we can continue to create and build onto it, and which is happening today. There's always new ideas cropping up on how to innovate onto the Bitcoin blockchain. Of course, there's new organizations cropping up all the time that are working on doing different things, creating different interfaces.
Let me ask you this. In a way, it kind of makes me think, it's kind of like, remember when Apple initially introduced the iPhone? I've got an iPhone here, and the strongest part of this is the apps. The apps that you can get. And at first we thought, why do we need that? We just want a phone, and if we can get access to the internet, that'll be good. Now we use these apps. And I think in the blockchain and all the possibilities with the Bitcoin is similar to that. As long as you comply with certain rules, certain set of parameters, you now can create all kinds of wonderful add-ins that we know about today, or many that we don't know about. Would that be a pretty good metaphor?
Yeah, that's true. And there's one key term here that we have to remember when it comes to wanting to do or make any kind of changes on the blockchain or in the Bitcoin system, and this is this notion of consensus. Bitcoin is ultimately a consensus system. So anytime that a developer or a team of developers want to make any type of changes to the Bitcoin blockchain, then there has to be a consensus. And who actually, this is kind of up in the air in terms of the Bitcoin community of who actually makes consensus, but it's generally the miners and the developers and the people who actually have a stake in the Bitcoin system, but maybe not necessarily a total financial stake. But if you have if you're developing it in any way or you're mining or you have that type of stake in the system, then you can be part of the consensus network in order to make changes to the Bitcoin. For instance, let's talk about one area of Bitcoin that is unchanging, that in order to be changed, there would obviously have to be a large consensus on the network. But currently right now, the Bitcoin ecosystem is only going to create 21 million coins over the long term, right? And this is something that is determined algorithmically, that was determined upon conception of the Bitcoin system. So in order for this to change in any way, there would have to be consensus on the network. But this is not something that we're going to change, and it's one of the inherent beautiful features of Bitcoin because it makes the currency disinflationary. Some people call it de-inflationary, but I think disinflationary is the better term because no one can manipulate the currency supply. That's one of the huge faults of fiat currencies is that individuals, nefarious actors, politicians, bankers, they control the currency supply. They can say, oh, we're just going to arbitrarily print more currency out of thin air with our central banking reserve mechanisms. But on Bitcoin, that doesn't happen. It's determined algorithmically, as we just discussed a moment ago. And it's always going to be like this. So it's disinflationary. And I think this is also one of the contributing factors to the rise in value of Bitcoin and why more people are starting to look and say, hey, this is something important. This is something special. This is something beautiful. Let's continue to grow it. Let's continue to buy into it and build it because this makes a huge difference. And it's the difference between a system based on trust, like the fiat systems, and where people and intermediaries are involved, and a trustless system based on mathematics, based on electricity, based on machines, based on a protocol. Beautiful thing. And it's just going to continue to grow.
Much better. It sounds really good. And so it's based on that kind of trust, which more and more people now around the world are using. The nice thing about it, if you get some Bitcoin here, if I give you 10,000 Bitcoins, to use a term for today, which would be a mighty nice thing, you could go to many countries around the world and use that Bitcoin in different places. I think that's good. To me, that seems like one of the real benefits for an entrepreneur. What would you say are some other benefits that entrepreneurs and business would be able to use with looking at just Bitcoin right now?
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind, and this is for an entrepreneur, for someone who wants to start any kind of business, or for someone who already owns or runs a business, the first best thing they could ever do for themselves is just start accepting Bitcoin. If it's possible for them, start accepting Bitcoin, because here's one of the problems with accepting. The major thing that a lot of places use right now are a system. They use the system of credit. That's, of course, is centralized, but that has a lot of built-in points of failure and also is very susceptible to fraudulent acts. So if a company starts accepting Bitcoin right now, if an entrepreneur starts accepting Bitcoin, they're automatically going to reduce their costs, right? Because if they accept Bitcoin, first of all, it's cheaper. Of course, and this is debatable depending on the scaling debate, which we haven't really got into yet. But it's cheaper to use Bitcoin because it doesn't have the same type of charges, depending on the depending on the prices, and depending on what they're dealing with. That some creditors have, the charges that they have are much more
you're
expensive.
talking about things like BitPay or excuse me, like PayPal and Visa, MasterCard charges that are there, and they can get rather onerous. You start changing and sending money internationally. Those of us that have done that know, whoa, you look at that and you go, the bank took that much money for this? Oh, that's a lot.
Right, exactly, because there's so many different filters involved in doing an exchange with MasterCard, Visa, these systems of credit. And there's going to be different charges taken out at different points, along the line of communication there with the charges. But another huge issue here is that like a retail company, they have this huge fear of what we call chargebacks, right?
Yes.
An individual can go to their bank and say, listen, I didn't make this purchase. This didn't happen. And they can charge that back. They can cancel that transaction. But it is on the company. The company still has to make that payment. They still have to take that hit. And there's no way that they can do anything about it other than file a lawsuit if they wanted to against the individual. Of course, that would get too pricey and be elongated into the future. So that's not something they want to do. But Bitcoin is not susceptible to chargebacks. Once that money is sent, it's sent. The purchase.
There's no way if I give you some money in Bitcoin and barring any kind of agreement as a gentleman's agreement or a business back and forth, you've got my money and I really can't get it back some way. I can't go call the headquarters of Bitcoin and tell them to hold that. There is no such thing as a headquarters of Bitcoin, right?
That is right. Since Bitcoin is totally decentralized, once we send money to another party, that money is sent. That Bitcoin is there. We can't call anybody up and get it back. It has to be arranged between the buyer and the seller, so to speak. Whoever did that interaction made that exchange. And this is another key term or a key concept that we're going to educate people on. This is a difference between a push and a pull system, right? So Bitcoin is a push system where the only thing that can happen in terms of an exchange is you push your money out, right? You hold the keys to your wallet and you send money to another company, right? Or another wallet, so to speak. Now, with a pull system like the credit system, Visa, MasterCard, all the different systems of credit, now there are companies that can actually pull money from accounts by contacting certain individuals, certain organizations, intermediaries, if they want to. And this is also this is a big issue because of the possibility of fraud. When money can be pulled out of accounts, you also get access to other people's information, their name, their whereabouts, possibly their social security number. So this is the problem that pull systems are fraught with automatically. So the push system is what Bitcoin is. There's no names associated with any Bitcoin addresses, no personal information, especially no addresses, no social security numbers, anything like that. And money can only be pushed out from the person who holds that wallet. And there's another implication of this. Governments and banks cannot freeze anybody's account. They can't hit a button at their bank and shut down a Bitcoin account. They actually have to gain access to those individual keys. And this is what Bitcoiners mean when they say you control your own wallet. You become your own bank. You don't have to rely on anybody else. So we should always remember the difference between a push and a pull system, and the innovation that Bitcoin is in this sense, and how much more powerful this is, and why this makes Bitcoin such a powerful tool in terms of a currency, in terms of money.
Yes, indeed. It really has some breakthrough options and capabilities when we look at it. Excuse me, a little something in my throat here. But that is part of the benefits of Bitcoin. And so we look at where we are today with Bitcoin now. Matter of fact, Sterling, I'm going to share my screen again so we can see what has happened in the time that you and I have been talking here, and what the price is of Bitcoin now. We know that it fluctuates a lot, and we want to see that. And here we are right now. Let me refresh this to make sure that's up to date. And there we are. Okay, it's at 22.35 now. We see a little bit of change in there. And that's part of the beauty and the risk of Bitcoin. It's changing up and down, but you own your own money. It's at your bank. No one can take that from you without you doing something you shouldn't do, like losing your keys, or they try to steal it from you as well. So I think it's really showing some major changes. We've only got a little bit of time left here. And I just want to mention there are some things you had mentioned earlier. There's altcoins, some alternative coins. They have a lot of potential. And for those of you that are watching this, you're going to hear these terms. And like any new field you go into, it can seem overwhelming. When you get in there first, you're going, oh my goodness, there's this new language called SegWit and hard forks and soft forks and user activated soft forks. And you go, what is all that? Just remember, it's a way for you to exchange money with someone, to buy, to sell. You do it in a private way. And really, in a way, the thing that helped me on it was to think of it kind of like sending a letter. If you went back 100 years ago to send a letter, you wrote it on a thing called paper. You might have used a typewriter. They had a few of those, but largely it'd be a pen. You would put it into an envelope and mail it. We can still do that today, of course, but it's much, much slower. If I want to get a message faster, I use electronic capabilities called email. It works really well. And I think that Bitcoin is more like the email versus the old antiquated system of using it that way. And so it opens up a lot of possibilities. And I think it's something to definitely look into. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. If anybody is interested in taking their money back to themselves, if they're interested in having more seamless transactions, if they're interested in just riding the wave of technology and being ahead of the game, getting into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is the way to go. And just briefly, so that people aren't overwhelmed, I want to just mention a couple of the altcoins that people may be interested in if they're interested in getting into the cryptocurrency space. And these are the relevant ones. There's another coin called, two different coins here I want to mention kind of together, Monero and Dash. Monero and Dash are two cryptocurrencies, and they're very similar to Bitcoin in the sense that they're money based on decentralized technology. But the big differences here is that Bitcoin is what we refer to as pseudo-anonymous, right? It's not completely anonymous. The addresses can be tracked, as we've seen in different judicial proceedings, different court proceedings and court cases. So people can be caught in a criminal case if their name and their identity is attached to an address. And usually this happens when people make exchanges at a Bitcoin exchange where they have to take people's credentials. But here's the beauty of things like Monero and Dash, and Monero to a larger degree are more anonymous, almost completely anonymous in the case of Monero, because the addresses are what they call mixed or tumbled when you send a transaction. So these are some of the differences in the case of these two cryptocurrencies with Bitcoin. So they each kind of have their different specifications and details and nice little things about them that differentiate them from, say, Bitcoin. And then another one, just one more altcoin that someone may be interested in, is called Ethereum. And Ethereum is a whole different kind of animal. It is a coin, but it is primarily used in an application that is used to build what they call smart contract applications or smart contract platforms. And developers are particularly wanting to use Ethereum to build what they call decentralized autonomous organizations, or organizations that run on top of a blockchain. However, this hasn't completely come to fruition yet, because I don't think all the technology is quite there yet in terms of building decentralized autonomous organizations. But just a little information on a couple of altcoins there to hopefully help get more people involved in the space and maybe not make it seem more daunting. But the first place I think to go for everybody is always going to be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is so useful. It's so easy to use. There's so many applications. It has the first starter initiative on the rest of the coins, and it's getting simpler and simpler every day to get into. And I want to recommend a wallet that anybody can use and download quickly and start putting Bitcoin in that wallet, but it's Mycelium. Mycelium is a great wallet. It's easy to use. I use it every day, all the time, to trade and exchange Bitcoins. And the application it's so very simple. So I recommend anybody want to get into it, get into Mycelium. And if anybody wants to trade and buy Bitcoin immediately, I always recommend Coinbase. Coinbase.com. You can log on and you can purchase Bitcoins with your credit card if you don't have any other way to get Bitcoin, or anybody locally to purchase Bitcoins from. That's always an option. So I just wanted to
very good. And of course, a really good place to get a lot of information on Bitcoin. If you're just getting into this, you're going, okay, I need to learn about it. A good place to learn about Bitcoin is at bitcoin.com, which is where, of course, you're writing, Sterlin, and you're able to do that. And so if you want to know more articles and read some of the really informative articles that Sterlin has written, I've enjoyed them myself a lot, go over to bitcoin.com. And Sterlin, if someone wants to get in touch with you even more, what would be a good way for them to reach you if they have a question or they want to follow up with you?
Sure. You can just send me a message on my Facebook page. It's Sterlin Luxan, Luxan. They can reach out to me there. Also, my email address, sterlin@bitcoin.com. If they have any questions regarding Bitcoin, just send me an email there. That's fine. I also run the Facebook page, Psychologic-Anarchist, where I do my relational anarchism, counseling anarchism, and look at issues regarding freedom and compassion and those kind of things. You can find me there for those type of questions. And yeah, that's sort of the main places you can find me. And also the Compassionate Anarchy group on Facebook. You can find me kind of mingling around there and hanging out as well. But yeah, check out bitcoin.com. And especially if you want to really get into Bitcoin, there's an easy place. It's bitcoin.com, and go to the menu section. I'm going to share my screen real quick and see if I can show.
Yeah, please do.
Show some folks this.
Yeah, I think this will be particularly useful, because when you can share your screen and you're showing us what's going on there, then we'll be able to see that a little bit better. Okay, it looks like we're over at bitcoin.com.
Yeah, so bitcoin.com/getting-started. This is our main screen here for bitcoin.com, and that has information. If you're brand new to cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, get on here. There's a frequently asked question section. There's guides, you need to know, real money sections, but you have the basics. Inform yourself, choose a wallet, get Bitcoin, spend Bitcoin. This is the basic how you can get. You see the little pizza here, so you can get
pizza on pizza day.
Yes, pizza on pizza day. So this is the easy way to do it. To get started on Bitcoin, use this page. When people ask me questions about Bitcoin, I reference them to this page so they can start learning immediately and get everything they need to know with a fact. Questions, it's all right here. But sure, send me a message if you want, and I can help you out in that way, however you want to do it. It's beautiful.
Sounds good. Sterlin, you are a wealth of information. I really appreciate the way you share and what you share. And those of you watching this, read his articles. There's some good articles there. You can click on the news tab there on bitcoin.com. A great source to get information, start learning, and get ready to have some fun. So on this pizza day for Bitcoin Pizza Day, again, it was 7 years ago today that Laszlo Hanyes, and I sure hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, directly. And if not, Laszlo, if you ever see this at some point in the future, please get in touch with me and let me know, because I'd love to thank you for what you did. Getting it started, 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 large pieces. Now we laugh about that because of Bitcoin being around over the $1,200 mark today. That's something. Now, it could go higher, it could go lower, could stay pretty close to say. How about that? I think I've covered myself either way. We don't know where, but it's an exciting technology. It's something you want to know about. I'm Terry Brock with terrybrock.com, and thanks for joining us here on Facebook or wherever you might be watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you a little bit later. Sterlin, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, and bye now.